Today, we're going to revisit this Panini versus Fanatics Antitrust lawsuit because there's been some updates that I think are going to have some pretty big ramifications, whether we like it or not, within this space over the next year or two, depending how long this damn thing takes. Now, I'm not going to go through this in complete detail because there are so many things to highlight. What I will do is reference Paul Lesko, as always, when it comes to news like this, and I'll put the link down below for you guys to read his Twitter thread, because this is essentially the longest one yet. It's pages and pages and pages of him assessing the two court cases. Now, to do a quick reminder, one of which is relating to Panini suing Fanatics for being antitrust, essentially being a monopoly within the sports card hobby. Yes, that's a bit of pot calling the kettle black, but I'll share my thoughts on that in a second. And the other one is the Fanatics lawsuit against Panini relating to not negotiating within good faith, doing things with employees that have tried to move from Panini to Fanatics, basically causing havoc, not acting ethically, and sort of doing, shady negotiations is probably a good way to put it. I'll reference exactly the lawsuit a bit later on, but it's a bit hard to remember it all off the bat. But the thing I want to focus in on is this antitrust lawsuit, because like I just alluded to, Panini is essentially approaching this saying, Fanatics has a monopoly. This is not good for the industry. And what's essentially happened is that, the judge ruled on the motion to dismiss from Fanatics in the favor of Panini, meaning this lawsuit is going ahead, and we're going to see them, argue in court. And there's going to be a lot of things that come up in discovery that are going to be pretty interesting for this hobby. This basically means that Panini has to come ahead, or go ahead, I should say, and prove that Fanatics is a monopoly and they are not good for this industry, which is going to be fairly interesting. Now, in that intro, you would have heard me talk about the pot being called the kettle black, because if you look at the last 10 or so years, I think Panini got their licenses in 2008, I think is when they first acquired Don Russ. It's mentioned within the lawsuit, I don't remember offhand. But they've basically been a one-man show for a long time. But what sort of Panini is arguing in this particular instance, and some of the things the judge themselves have highlighted, is that whilst Panini have been around and been the main manufacturer for a long period of time, they've really only held a license for, on average, at least 5 years. And that's obviously not the case for football. That's not the case for basketball, but in terms of other licenses they've won and lost, that is certainly the case, at least according to these notes here from Paul. Now, this is pretty interesting because, like I sort of said, you've got Panini coming in, having all these licenses, but now Topps have come in and have everything, and they're going to get basketball shortly, they're going to get football shortly. Panini is basically saying, hey, you guys are not good for this industry. So the discovery that we're about to see, or the information we're about to see, the dialogue between these two companies, I think is going to be really, really interesting. And ultimately where I hope this lands is that we have multiple manufacturers producing licensed cards. One of the biggest pain points over the last 20 years, I want to say, is that you've had licenses go to one manufacturer, and that basically mean we sort of get shafted as consumers because you're getting watered down product that's priced through the moon. You're not getting good quality, and you can really only go to one location to get it, i.e. Panini right now, and then Fanatics down the line. And there's a lot to sort of come from this, but it's just interesting that the judge decided to sort of dismiss Fanatics' claim to try and get the case dismissed, because this is now going ahead and we're going to see a bit more. Now, there's multi-facets to this whole situation. You've got, accusations from the leagues themselves, the player associations. You've got all these things regarding, how Panini has paid athletes in the past, and that's, Fanatics coming in and trying to say they're doing better for the hobby than what Panini did because they're actually looking after athletes and the like. But it's one of those ones that's going to give us a lot of really good insights. I'm curious to sort of see what happens next, but I wanted to give the update that this thing is going ahead, and we've talked about it on the channel a few times when Paul has given us these updates with this lawsuit, and I just think it's going to be an interesting one. Now, I've said interesting a few times, but ultimately I hope this is going to be good for consumers. I would very much like to be in a position where both Fanatics and Panini are producing licensed cards at the same time, because competition breeds value for us as consumers, right? If you've got two companies constantly trying to one-up each other in terms of making cooler product for us, putting better patches in, putting better short prints in, I think that's going to be best for us at the end of the day, versus having a company that can sort of do what Panini's done in the last 5 years and just print things to the moon, give us shitty product, give us non-game one stuff and the like, right? That's not good, which again is where the pot calling the kettle black comes into it, because they're basically sitting there and saying, hey, Fanatics, you guys can't do all this sort of thing because it's bad for the industry. But guess what? Don't look at what all this stuff we've done in the last decade or so. Don't look at that. Just look at the future, right? So it's a bit ironic, to be honest, from Panini, but let's sort of see what happens now. Like I said, Paul has given so many updates to this. It's just pages and pages and pages and pages and pages. And he sort of closes it off with an interesting, situation, because Panini was trying to dismiss Fanatics' lawsuit against them for, going after employees with litigation, not acting in good faith, and they were trying to sort of look at the acquisition, reporting earnings incorrectly about, what they were making off the back of these player association agreements and the like. But Paul essentially says this. So that's really it. What survives, you can't see my mouse, sorry guys. What survives for Fanatics' lawsuit against Panini is that Panini may have unlawfully blocked some of its employees from going to work for Fanatics, so that portion of their lawsuit is still going to go ahead. But what survives for Panini is, well, the entire antitrust case, which is, a really interesting thing. And as Paul does say, the guy is a lawyer, so you need to watch or read through all this sort of stuff because you explain things really well. It's just too much for me to try and recap for you guys. What he does say is Panini is the bigger winner here, and this does not mean that Panini is going to win their suit or Fanatics is going to win their countersuit. What it does mean is that we're going to get a bit of discovery over here, and we're going to see a lot more updates in recent months, or not in recent months, in coming months and coming years. So I want to hear what you guys have to say down below on this one. I think ultimately this is going to be good for consumers in some shape or another, whether it means Panini, disappears, who knows? Whether it means Fanatics has to give up some of these licenses that they've just purchased, I don't know. Maybe the lawyer's going to, or maybe the judge is going to say, sorry, not the lawyer. Maybe the judge is going to say that, there is a monopoly here when we sort of can't allow one company to own this much of this space. So, you pick which licenses you want to give up. Panini, you go ahead and pick them up, or, Upper Deck, you go ahead and pick them up. I just think, or I just hope we're going to land in a position where this is just better for consumers. So anyway, share your thoughts down below. I didn't really touch on the Fanatics lawsuit all that much because I think the big thing is that antitrust lawsuit. And I just truly hope this lands in a position for us as consumers where we're better off. So anyway, share your thoughts down below. And a lot of people hate Panini. I obviously do as well for what they've done in recent years. But, Fanatics is no better, and they've proven that themselves, right, with all the trash product they've put out in recent years. And or maybe recent months, I should say, I've made a number of videos on these where they've dropped the ball. They've clearly shown they're in it for the money, which is their prerogative, right? Their business. They're there to make as much money as possible. But when they've come in and sort of talked about wanting to upskill the hobby, talked about wanting to improve the hobby, talked about wanting to bring back collectibles, wanted to sort of elevate collectors, they've not done that, right? They've done a lot of talk, but they've not done a whole lot of action that's going to benefit us as consumers. So they're both the same, level of shithousery, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. They're both the level of, not really looking out for consumers. So if we can get to a position where they can go head to head, bash each other and sort of try and one-up each other, I think that's the best thing for us. So anyway, I'm rambling and repeating myself. You guys get the point. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.